Miller believed that as the self-appointed most talented amongst their profession, the Society of Gardeners would soon compile a catalogue of all the foreign species growing in English gardens. Sadly, the Society collapsed, overwhelmed by the enormity of the task. But it made Miller's name. He was appointed head of the most prestigious botanic garden in London, the Chelsea Physic Garden. As he began his work, Miller, who was never short of confidence, promised that Chelsea would soon outvie all other gardens in Europe. And he was probably right. In the 50 years Miller was here, he utterly transformed the garden. He was directly responsible for doubling the number of foreign species successfully grown in Britain. The purpose of a physic garden was to grow plants that had medicinal properties. But Miller went further. He developed the garden into a centre of economic botany, growing cotton and roots used in the dye industry. A lot of the plants here have the second name tinctorius, which implies that they were used as a dye. So here, for example, we've got Dyer's Weld, Reseda luteola. Got Rivinus here for a red dye. And there's other dye plants in here like woad, though now it's being used as a treatment for cancer. So now you've got your dyes, you've got to have something to dye. So here, lots of plants used for their fibres. So we've got sisal, for example, for rope. Brucinetia used in Japan. And finally, one of the plants that changed the world, really, cotton. Hard to imagine the history of America being the same as it was had it not been for the cultivation of cotton. Oh, really? Daniel Pretlove is one of the gardeners here at Chelsea. An aim of the Physic Garden is to keep it looking as it did in Miller's time.
We still keep, obviously, as you see here, the vegetable beds, the herbal beds, the pharmaceutical beds have been set out as Miller had them in his time as well.
Were they?
Yes, they were reinstalled about 15 years ago, I think.
He's a great person to have in your history, isn't he? He's such a major figure in the history of English gardening.
Well, and he was here for such a long time, and he changed the face of horticulture.
Miller was an innovator. To grow the more exotic species, he set about designing glasshouses with their own intricate heating systems. So Miller had glasshouses. How did he heat them?
They were coal-fired, and they were quite elaborate structures.
Did somebody have to stay up all night stoking the boilers?
They usually had someone and it was usually what they call the undergardener then,
yes.
which was sort of the apprentice, was the one that had to put out the fires and things like that. And
Trainees today, they don't know they're
born to that.
Don't know that they have such an easy time of it.
That's right.
In his day, Philip Miller was regarded as the most distinguished and influential gardener in Britain. But it wasn't simply for what he'd achieved here at Chelsea, it was for what he'd written. Miller took all the notes from the ill-fated Society of Gardeners and compiled the first comprehensive dictionary of gardening. Miller's book is this great bringing together of the knowledge of that time. He's gathering together names and horticultural practice and putting it in one place. For the first time, everything you needed to know about every plant you were likely to find in an English garden was in one place. And it became really the standard work, the Bible, if you like. Miller simply listed everything clearly and in alphabetical order. He made no attempt to classify. His dictionary, published in 1731, became the reference work for gardeners around the world. All the names given to the same plant were listed together.
eliminating confusion. The dictionary gathered more credence and authority with every new edition,